Welcome back, everyone, for the last session of this morning. And this one's going to be all in person. I feel like as the days progressed, we've extracted our speakers from the virtual world and brought them into the room. But this will be the best session of the morning. No. So you heard from a number of leaders this morning about the many different industries in which quantum information science is playing a role. And it's clear that this field is growing and maturing, will have an impact on many, many different areas. So for those of us who are embarking on careers in quantum, this means there's going to be many opportunities. This is very multifaceted, and there's a lot of potential and lots of ways in which you can be involved in this field. So today's panel is going to be a discussion on careers from PME, current PME trainees and PME alumni. And this is a really interesting panel because in many ways they represent the evolution of the PME over the last 10 years. And each of our speakers has taken a slightly different career path since finishing grad school. So they have really valuable perspectives to bring on how you can leverage your PME experience into advancing your careers. So first we have Aaron Fluitt. He's the Senior Manager of Initiative Development at Argonne National Laboratory. You finished at PME in 2015, I believe. Kambe is our next speaker. He's the CEO and co-founder of NanoPattern Technologies. You graduated from the PME in 2019. And last, we have Leah Weiss. She's a postdoctoral scholar in the Awschalom Group at PME. So welcome, Leah, Aaron, and you. Maybe to start with, I'll have each of you kind of introduce yourself, tell us about your current role, and what path you took to get here. So Aaron, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'll try to start at the beginning. I'm a Midwest guy. I spent my first 22 years in Lincoln, Nebraska. Moved to Madison to join Wanda Pablo's group in 2010. And then of course, moved to Chicago to help start up the PME. And so I followed him and finished my PhD in 2015. Over the course of my PhD, my interests broadened a little bit, and I wanted to get some kind of orthogonal skills after graduate school. So I did management consulting with the Boston Consulting Group for about a year and a half, and then joined Argonne National Laboratory, where I've been in a series of roles involving industry partnership development, technology transfer, strategy development, and capture for major opportunities.
Thanks, Aaron. Do you want to go next?
Hey, everybody. Really good to see everybody in person. So really, first event in person I've attended in a while. So really good to see everybody. My name is Kambe, CEO and co-founder for NanoPattern Technologies. That's my current vocation after immediately graduating. So just to give a little bit of background, I was born in Tokyo, and then I immigrated to the US when I was 7 years old. I grew up as a Cali kid, and then decided to move away as far away from my parents as possible. Went to Cornell University, got my material science degree, and then moved to Silicon Valley again, and that's where I worked in R&D management for silver nanowires for the next generation transparent conductive films. And during that period, decided to come into the PhD to really understand how I can pursue an R&D career. And during that period, really got involved with the entrepreneurship scene here at the University of Chicago through the Polsky Center. And through that and through the networking there, met Preeti Chalsani, my co-founder, and we started the company together.
You. Leah?
Yep, I'm also from the Midwest, so it's good to be back in the Midwest where I grew up. And I did my undergrad in physics at Harvard. I went overseas to the UK to University of Cambridge to do my MPhil and PhD in physics, and then came back home here to start my postdoc in the Awschalom Group.
Thanks. Maybe I'd like to tie our discussions back a little bit towards the quantum stream. And what's interesting to me is each of you is working in a very different area, but you've each had some involvement in quantum or impacted by it in different ways. Can you speak to that? Maybe Leah, I can start with you first.
Yeah, so coming to the PME, to University of Chicago, it's a blossoming environment for quantum. I can go down the hall to experts in superconducting qubits, but at the same time, for sensing applications, I can go upstairs and talk to people in material science and biology, and it's that kind of confluence of expertise in the same building, in the same city, here to Argonne, to all the companies in the accelerator program, Duality, that makes doing quantum here in the PME very, very special. And yeah, that's really just opened up my eyes to sort of how many people can come together to really build something in quantum, especially here in the Midwest. So it's just been a really special opportunity for me to be here and work with people.
How about you?
Yeah, so in terms of the quantum world, I'm kind of in a peripheral, right? So we're working in quantum dot nanomaterials for the next generation of optoelectronics. So but at the same time, we have seen so many influences from the quantum world in our world as well. So in particular, just having such an emphasis in this area for physical science-oriented innovation has been an amazing thing, because that kind of addition of those interest points and investment points has allowed for the physical science community, especially for entrepreneurship and starting a company, to really flourish in the Midwest. And I mean that from a direct experience point, let it be finding investors who just actually understand what physical science is and they don't think it's just another tech thing. Has been very, very valuable. And just being able to access some of the facilities in equivalence, right? The Pritzker nanofabrication facilities, Center for Nanoscale Materials. I mean, these are facilities that really have expanded their capabilities thanks to the quantum community. And we've really, benefited from it as well. So really happy about that.
And it's certainly a two-way street. There's a lot of exchanges between the two communities.
Exactly, yeah, and that has allowed for some of the knowledge to be transferred over and create a new community as well. So really fun.
How about you, Aaron? I know you've been involved deeply in this.
I have, but in a different way. So show of hands, how many of you in the audience actually work in QIS? Okay, so a lot of you. I'm not one of you. I admire
proudly.
Right, I admire you very much. My own personal work was closer to biophysics or computational chemistry, but I did have a nice opportunity in QIS that I'm proud of, and I can share a little bit about. In 2018, Argonne launched an effort with the University of Chicago and some of our regional partners to capture for the Chicago area a national quantum information science research center. These were created through the National Quantum Initiative Act. There was a lot of money, about half the money in the bill went to the Department of Energy for the creation of these centers. And we wanted to make sure that, consistent with our strategy to make Chicago a global hub for QIS, we wanted to bring one of these major centers to the area. So my role in this team with David and Supratik and others was not to bring the research vision to the table, because we have lots of experts that were on the team, but rather to sort of shepherd the process of creating that vision, distilling that down into research goals, building the right team, making sure that all the right kind of legal structures were in place, and then actually translating that into a winning proposal. So it was a big team. We had about 150 people working on it at the end, but we won an award that became QNext. So that was my sort of tangent with quantum, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, I think for all of us who are involved in QNext, we owe a huge thanks to Aaron. Many, many, many hours and many spreadsheets later, we had the center. I kind of want to bring the focus back again to PME and talk a little bit more in particular. Like, how did you leverage your experience at PME into your career now? Like, what did you do while you were a PME? How were you able to take advantage of it? So maybe I will start with you.
Yeah, so I've benefited so much from the programming here. So, in terms from a, really experiencing and exploring the world of entrepreneurship and, trying to start a company. One of the first things that I'm proud to say, I didn't realize I accidentally stumbled into the Innovation Fund Associates program. But it was such an amazing thing to go through. So the Innovation Fund, the George Shultz Innovation Fund Associates program really teaches associates about the whole market diligence process. And it really taught me how to actually take a technology, identify its very valuable elements, and see if there's a market hypothesis that we can actually hit with this particular product. So, that was actually early on in my PhD that I did that, and I know that the program is flourishing still now. But as a part of that, it's really kickstarted, really getting involved with the Polsky Center, networking through, wonderful people like Preeti, and, really understanding how technology from the benchtop or on the computer desktop is really translated into a technology, into an IP, and how it eventually gets commercialized. So the Associates program, eventually when we were thinking about launching the company and through the IP that was generated here at the University of Chicago, we went through the Polsky I-Corps program, which then really whips you into shape when it comes down to market diligence and market discovery, really kind of learning all the details of how to actually interview people and extract useful information. So we participated in that, and then since then we've gone through actually on the other side of the George Shultz Innovation Fund as a competitor, as a company competitor, and we won. And that was the funding that was needed to really tie us over until recently we received our National Science Foundation's SBIR Phase 2 grant. But everything here has really enabled us to really take it from conception, really do the right diligence needed to actually bring it to a point where I feel like we had a control and understanding of how the technology got commercialized from the very beginning instead of it being a lucky win, although there's a lot of luck involved already.
So would you say that the fact that PME is so tied into other units of the university was really helpful here?
Yeah, exactly. And having a mentor like Paul Neely allow me to actually explore those communities as well was very, very important. And just having a community that was open to it in general.
Aaron?
So I came to PME at a unique time. It was an order of magnitude smaller. There was no curriculum at the time. All of this was in process, and it was soon to kind of flourish and benefit all the students that were to come, but it was in its very early days at that point. But I did notice right away that the ecosystem is so much richer here than it was in the places I was before, which was kind of these mid-sized college towns in other Midwestern states. But to have not just one, but a number of top universities around Chicago, 2 national laboratories, a thriving kind of investment and innovation community as well, I think opened up opportunities for me that I probably wouldn't have even thought about, much less pursued, had I not come to Chicago. So that was valuable for me.
Aaron, were you the first graduate student to graduate from PME?
No, there was Paulina Rincon was the first, and then I was part of a group of 3 that were collectively second. I think I walked across the stage first, so I call myself second.
So you can claim first in certain places.
Maybe.
Thanks. Leah, how about you? How's your experience at PME like now, and how are you leveraging everything it has to offer?
Yeah, I think for me, education and teaching is one of the most important aspects of what I want to do. And the students in the PME are incredible. Not only are they so hardworking, but they're incredibly creative. They collaborate together. And I think that's really fostered by the culture of the PME. So as a postdoc, you're sort of training partly to teach, and I've been involved in helping to teach a course that I think the fact that the PME is so young, it means you can have some creative coursework and creative teaching. So as a course, sort of surveying experimental techniques, if you're trying to do research, if you're trying to ask a question, what technique do you choose and why, and what are the limitations? It's really a special course, and interacting with students in that context and in labs has been incredibly special.
Are there different types of initiatives or programs you're involved in, in collaboration with these students or other postdocs?
So I can go into two directions here. I'll first go in the direction that you already mentioned, which is the connections to the Polsky Center. So I've been involved in the I-Core program, which takes a piece of knowledge from the lab and investigates through market research, teaching you how to ask questions in market research. Is this technology actually useful? If so, to whom? And learning to communicate with people really outside of your field to investigate where is this technology actually going to make a difference or actually help someone in their daily life is really important and feeds back into the research, because that question should always be with us when we're using public funds and doing research and in this very special place asking questions. The impact is key. So that's a really critical part of the PME, the access to entrepreneurship resources. And on the other side, we're at a very young institution that's growing, but in the quantum information field, we are not representative, and we have a long way to go to meet, to really support minoritized scientists in quantum information. With a group of students and postdocs and people across institutions in the Chicago Quantum Exchange, we've started an initiative called the Open Quantum Initiative that's pushing to develop resources to really support minoritized scientists in quantum information. And this is one of the things I'm most excited about, and being encouraged to do that on the side of research wouldn't happen anywhere, but it's very important, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it evolve over the coming years.
That's really great to hear about. So you're working on something you're passionate about, you're building your leadership skills, demonstrating your leadership skills while doing service to the field in general. That's really valuable.
It's a big team of lots of people. It's definitely not me alone, and the team of people across UIUC, UChicago, Argonne, wonderful people at the CQE, Preeti included. It's a big team really making a statement that this is something that's critically important and that we want to push forward over the coming years.
I'd like to kind of pivot a little bit to ask, so you're kind of in your early careers now, having spent a few years outside of grad school, like, can you talk about what kinds of skills and expertise are valuable? Like, what has served you well in these few years? And if you were to talk to the trainees who are currently in grad school or undergrads, what would you tell them to do? Like, what should they develop? What kinds of things should they pay attention to? Aaron, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'm going to say what I think is sometimes a dirty word in academic circles, but sales skills are really, really important. And I think we all have this, the sales brings this connotation of sort of like a transactional behavior. But I think good sales is actually not that way, right? Good sales is understanding what somebody needs and then working with them to deliver them what they need, right? That's what it is at the core. And so it's a skill that I think tends to be underdeveloped in graduate students, not out of their own neglect, but it's just not kind of traditionally thought of as part of the PhD program. But I've found in my career that if you have the great idea but you can't find anyone that it benefits, you're not going to go very far, right? So I think kind of making that connection and closing that loop so that your ideas receive the support that they need to kind of build more big ideas and build a program, I think is really important. So maybe something to think about that's not always thought of on the critical path of graduate school.
And how do you think one could build the sales skills while in graduate school?
Yeah, I think there's, ultimately, I think you have to get in front of people to do it, right? It's not something you can read a textbook and learn it that way. So, I know that the PME now has a number of science communication programs that I think can be beneficial for this. Innovation-centered programs through the Polsky Center, I think can also help to kind of build that ideas of turning a good idea into something that's actionable or something that's real. And certainly it's not something you build in graduate school and then graduate and stop and you're all done, right? This is kind of a lifelong building process. I'm not all the way there. I expect that I have a lot more work to do, so it's going to be a process.
Perhaps that's also something to keep in mind even when you're doing conference presentations, to think about what's the story you're telling and are you actually able to sell this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, storytelling is a big part of it, right? Did anybody see George Crabtree's talk at 10:15?
Would have been upstairs.
Okay, I know a few of us did. George told a whole story. It had a beginning and a middle and an end, and it's easy to follow that way, right? And so that makes these big ideas more kind of digestible and more relatable for people, and that's part, I think that's part of sales, right? Is being able to help them make that connection between what you're offering and what they need.
Yeah.
Can I answer that one?
Yeah.
So my whole thing was actually also going to be communication, right? So science communication is such a, it was actually pretty interesting. So as a part of our, so I was the first year cohort for the PME, and as a part of that, we actually had a program, I don't know if it's still going, but where we invited folks from the second city, the coaches there, and then we went to the Museum of Science Industry, and we first of all taught middle school kids about our particular research topic, and we did like a hands-on thing. But as a part of that, the philosophy about bringing improv teachers into the room was to get us from kind of railroading a story, right, getting a PowerPoint presentation and just like reading through it, and actually being able to read an audience and try to tailor the story specifically to what the audience actually wants to see. Plus, we got to see professors playing the I'm an egg, I'm a dinosaur game, which was phenomenal. But yeah, it was, I think that really clicked something in my head about, just when it comes down to sales, it's exactly that, right? And for me, in a pitch meeting, if I'm trying to sell the technology to customers or to investors, I have to read at what is the customer or what are the investors actually kind of engaging with, and then kind of take that and then bring it to the next stage. So that kind of science communication actually ended up being one of the great education pieces during my PME time, really getting into being able to understand and kind of tailor a story, like you said, for the community. So I would sincerely recommend kind of building and honing that capability, and just kind of throw it out there. Just go play some Dungeons and Dragons, like literally play some role-playing games, right? Like that, all about that is just prepping something and then just having other people kind of pick and play what you want and being able to accommodate to their storyline. So do something like that, get that going as quickly as possible. So.
Very interesting, Dungeons and Dragons. Leah?
Yeah, I think in terms of skills, communication is always important, and it forms a key part of what I think is a skill you build in grad school and through postdoc and continually is collaborating with people. Science really doesn't get done alone, and it's no fun to do alone. So I think the skill of finding people you click with to ask questions together and get excited about a project together and find all the pieces you need to bring a project together. That aspect of science collaborating effectively is really a skill, and I think building that from PhD through, no matter where you end up, in a startup, in a big company, collaborating with people is critically important, and I think it's one of the key skills that you learn in your PhD and then continue to grow as you go along.
Yeah, collaboration, that's interesting. How about, you're each running groups, so you're running a lab, you're running a small company. Are there other things like project management that you had a chance to build on while you were in grad school, or how should people think about building those skills?
Oh, yeah. I can speak to that really quickly. The specific one I would say is actually time predictability. The ability to kind of see like an order or like a technology being placed as a research topic, and then being able to say, all right, I think I can make this work in like 6 months, maybe a week or two, who knows, but like, being able to actually have an intuition to actually kind of predict the completion of a specific invention in some cases, right? Like, being able to predict the formation of something that's never existed before, that is a super skill. And if you're going to be a manager in any environment, that's going to be one of the key things that you do, is you talk to customers or you talk to your management and you say, we need this done by this point. How many people do you need? Can you do it in this time? And you got to be able to say, yes, this is how much money we're going to need. So.
Yeah, I'm not leading a group. I'm a postdoc. But I will say, like at every stage, from when you're an undergrad to PhD to taking the biggest risk there is in having a startup, like risk management is an aspect of project management that's critically important. And I think I made many mistakes. We all make mistakes in that. And through those mistakes, you learn how to assess the risk, how to mitigate risk in a process that's inherently risky. Research is risky. You don't know where things are going to go and how they're going to go and what's going to come up. But number one, building the kind of personal reserve to manage risk within yourself. And number two, the kind of decision tree of, okay, how do I have plans that plan for the potential risk of a few different paths. And again, people start their PhDs and they go into postdocs, they go into industry, but risk management stays with you and follows you. And I think that's another skill from the PhD and certainly the postdoc that I see as pretty critical.
I think it's fair to say grad school gives you a lot of opportunities to build up that skill set. There's lots of risks all the time. I should remind people to, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A or in the chat. Maybe one last question before we go to questions from the audience. So you all have slightly different career paths, and what it means to have a career now is very different from what it was 10 years ago when we all you kind of followed the same linear path. I'm wondering if over the course of time you've had mentors who've helped you think through your choices, who've helped you along the way, and maybe if you have had a chance to be a mentor to people, is that something that's played a role in your career and how you've developed? Perhaps Leah, I will start with you.
Yes, I have been so lucky to have really good mentorship throughout my time in science, and that's made all the difference. It can be the difference between continuing when science feels hard or not. And to me, good mentorship is all about generosity of spirit, of really looking at the person across from you and saying, I believe that you have it in you to do this hard thing, because doing a PhD is hard, and you need a lot of support. And that kind of generosity to see the other person, give them time and support and encouragement when they need it, also maybe a push when they need it, is so important and has has made all the difference for me. And I really can only hope to take what I've learned from the tremendous mentors in my life and kind of feed forward and give back to the people around me.
I mean,
you?
yeah, first of all, and continue to be some of the best mentors I've ever had in my life were my postdocs, during the PhD. Of course, Professor Paul Neely, my PI, has been an amazing mentor and also just allowing me to explore the other, options when it comes down to career paths was pretty amazing. But when it comes down to, how, being in a position and also having a platform as a CEO now to actually really bring hopefully some tangible change. So you mentioned one factor being diversity, and hopefully without trying to sound too corporate, right? Because whenever I feel like sometimes when I talk about diversity, it can sound a little bit like from the paper, but we're trying to get to over 50%, minority or female represented company right now, and I'm just going to publicly declare because that's something that I'm planning to do. And also as a part of that, we are creating a mentorship program. So all the board members, advisors have an employee who they advise in that sense. So trying to kind of make sure that there's a connection between the two. And really making sure that from that standpoint, making sure that those advisors are not just a monochrome when it comes down to representation, just making sure that those people are the people in leadership who are the people who can actually mentor as well. So that's been at least a goal for me as well. So.
Aaron, would you like to add to that?
Sure. And I think about a series of mentors and bosses who have shaped my development over the past 10 years or so. Juan is among those. I worked with him for 5 years, spanning Wisconsin and Chicago, and I think really looked to him as a role model for kind of my development as not only a scientist but a professional in general. When I was in the academic space, I've worked a lot with Suresh Sundararajan, who's Associate Laboratory Director for Energy and Global Security at Argonne. He was kind of one of my first bosses at Argonne, and then he moved to a different part of the organization, and I missed working for him so much that I actually followed him about a year after that. And I think what's common among all of these people is they have gone out of their way to put me in a position to succeed or to develop a skill that I hadn't developed yet. And so I think it's that sort of thoughtful, intentional mentorship of people that makes a bigger difference than something which is more superficial.
Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience, either virtual or live, if we have any. While we're waiting for the questions from the chat to be announced, I think I'd like to kind of come back to a slightly more personal question as well. Again, going back to careers and thinking about careers as being these linear things. We always think about in terms of professional goals and milestones, what do we want to do? But often it's also personal milestones or personal constraints that end up dictating our careers or highlighting paths or avenues for us which we may not have thought about before. Do any of our panelists have something to, do you have any perspectives on this, or has this played a role in your own career? You?
Sure. I'm happy to start. I would say majority of that, my career decision to go into entrepreneurship was actually a personal decision. From many different ways.
This is not an easy one either.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. But I think one big element is, I got married in 2020, and I am proud to say that I am I guess the term would be medical spouse. So my wonderful wife, she is the smart one in the family, and the way that her career trajectory works, it made for about a 2 to 3 year gap where I could fill when it comes down to doing something before we kind of roll the die on the next place that we would be moving to, potentially Chicago, potentially other places. So as a part of that, I wanted to do something that was potentially a little bit more high risk, but had kind of a milestone at 2 to 3 year point, which is typically when the technology that you're trying to commercialize really kind of hits a milestone where it's going to go or it's kind of going to fizzle down. So I figured, okay, if it's going to work, it's going to work during this period. So let's try it. So that did kind of when I looked at it, that felt like the most fulfilling way that I could fill my 3 years before I had to kind of face another certain degree of uncertainty there as well. So and plus it's a lot of fun. So
That's an extremely strategic use of this time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
How about you, Leah?
Yeah, for me, a big kind of personal consideration is just being close to my family. I mean, I think we kind of have this idea that you follow the trajectory that maximizes, what science you can do. And I got really lucky that actually my family is all nearby in a place where I can do what I want to do. And I think we make these choices as we select where to go that we don't always talk about the really personal side of those choices, that maybe you want to be where things work with your spouse or where your family is nearby or any number of considerations. And I really think we should talk about this more because we're all making those choices.
How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think becoming a father helped me crystallize my views on what work is for in my life. I have 2 young daughters, they're 6 and 3. And I quickly realized, a few months into my tenure at BCG that while consulting was very intellectually interesting and I was developing a lot in ways that I wouldn't have along another career path, that kind of career burns hot, right? So I had to figure out kind of the right time to get out and try something else that was more sustainable long term. I think being a father and having, being that much more kind of invested in somebody else to care for and develop, I think got me out of this mode of thinking I had been in for most of my life, which is kind of do the most ambitious, hardest thing, climb the ladder as fast as possible. And it's just that doesn't work for me anymore. So what I've focused on really over the last 4 to 5 years, I think, is doing work that I really like day to day. And it's kind of a miracle that the job that I love is the job that I have. And it's like 15 minutes away from me. If I was going there, I've been working from home. I like my coworkers. I love the mission of the institution. I love that it keeps me around Chicago. And professionally, I'm happier than I've ever been. And I really think it's because I'm actually not trying out a little bit better.
Hiring in your team. Are there any questions from Pat?
I do have a question for our virtual audience. So now, given the benefit of hindsight, being 2020, how would you have done anything differently during your PhD research projects?
I think one thing that I want to bring home is like you don't need the best laid plans of mice and men, right? Like this idea of what your life is going to be. Like I think I wanted to see if entrepreneurship would work, but if Dimitri hadn't come along with a beautiful science paper in 2017 that just like inspired me to work on it, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So much of it is kind of reacting to the current situation. So I just want to say before I answer that question, you have great ambitions, but don't be afraid to kind of adjust as needed I certainly, I can't speak for you guys, but like I certainly didn't have like a 10-year plan going forward, and I am kind of looking at it on a daily and adjusting my career as needed to fit my current state and my current philosophy. And then when it comes down to just things that I would change during my research, I think, I continue on. Honestly, I do the exact same thing I did, because there were so many factors of potential chance associated with it that, I couldn't have foreseen all the ways that this would have, turned out. So.
That's a good way to think about it. How about you, Aaron?
Another show of hands. How many graduate students in the room? Okay, so a good number. So statistically, I think it's pretty much impossible that there isn't at least one graduate student in this room who feels like they're struggling with graduate school. I know I felt that way. And even if you're not showing it on the surface, I think there's got to be at least one person in this room that feels that way. And so there's two things that I want to emphasize. And they both are related to graduate student mental health, which I think is getting some more attention now than it used to, but it's still, I think, there's a long ways to go, okay? So number one is, I hope you will talk to somebody about how you're feeling. This is something that was really hard for me to do, and it was, I wish I had done that much earlier, and I think I could have made the adjustments in my kind of research world to I think feel a little more kind of energetic going to do research every day. And the second is, I think it's easy to get tunnel vision when you're in graduate school, because the way that you're measured as a graduate student is, papers and presentations and things like, right? It's the academic measures. But the way you're measured on success in practically any other career is not like that. You're measured in other ways. So I think the core of the second point is, I hope you will not despair that there is not some great career out there for you, right? All you have to do is just take a little bit of initiative to go and try and find it. You're not going to find it right away. It may be kind of an iterative process, right? You take one step in a direction you've not gone in before. So for me, that was consulting. And it led back to a career at Argonne that I honestly didn't know existed when I was a graduate student. And I never would have found it if I'd gone off somewhere else to become a postdoc. And so I think it's, have faith that you as a graduate student are going to be in extremely high demand when you graduate. You're going to have a lot of career options. Your skills are going to apply and translate to a lot of different careers. And so all that is waiting out there for you, but you have to kind of go and get it. But it is there. So that's my emphasis.
That's very, very true. And I think that applies not just to graduate school, but probably every point in life after too. So Leah, maybe we'll close with you. I think we have a little bit.
I think Aaron's point is so important that I just want to reiterate it again. Everybody in their PhDs has times that really test them, and you need people around you, you need support, you need to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling, and when you look back, those people are part of your life from then on. The people who really supported you, the people you went to when you're struggling, and those relationships are really special. So I wouldn't change those points of struggling, because taking that point and asking for help and reaching out to the people around me, it's part of building the relationships that are defining and really important and special. So I'll just reiterate Aaron's point, because I hope all the students in the audience really know it.
Thanks so much. We're just about out of time, so I'm going to stop here, but I honestly thought that was a really heartfelt, very real discussion. hopefully our trainees and alumni in the audience thought that as well. I know our panelists are around if you want to grab them after. We're going to move on to lunch after this, so I'm sure they'll be willing to talk to you more if you have other questions.